Hello on the daily, fam bam, squad. It's your host, Danielle. Welcome back to Unplugged. I've been thinking a lot this week about feeding my soul and what that means. And I think probably what it comes from is when I teach, you might know this, I teach for Soul Cycle and I'm part of our training team. And right now we have a really amazing, badass group of humans going through the training program to become instructors. And myself and a few other instructors, a couple other instructors in LA are training them. And we today talked about feeding your soul and what that looks like, and how if what you're doing in this life does not feed your soul, then you're not proving anything to anyone to stay doing that thing. And I've just been thinking about that a lot. And then obviously with this episode with Anastasia earlier in the week, and we talked about our core values and we talked about, things that we do to feed our soul. And I want you to, if you are out there and you're listening to this, I want you to think about your life right now and all of the things you do and all of the hats that you wear. And I want you to think about your job. And if you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still work that job? I want you to think about the house that you live in. I want you to think about the car you drive. I want you to think about the commitments that you have. I want you to think about the obligations or the things that you say yes to in this life. If you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still say yes to all those things? Would you still live in that house? Would you still drive that car? Would you still, I guess, your life would, if you have more money, you can probably buy a nicer car and you can probably buy a nicer house. But just start thinking about those things, because if you're out there and the answer is no, if I just asked that question, would you still keep your job if you won the lottery tomorrow, and you answered no, then I got to ask you, why are you doing it now? I'm a firm believer that everything we do in this life needs to align with our core values, and if they don't, then what can we do? And what changes can we make to allow those things to, peacefully depart, I guess. Like if we're doing things that don't feed our soul, if we're doing things that don't fulfill our core values, how can we make changes, right? Because there's fear involved. And trust me, I know what that feeling is. I know that feeling of knowing that what you're doing is not what you want to be doing, nor is it what you should be doing, nor is it part of the bigger picture for you. I've been there. So I know that feeling. And I think what it comes down to is you first have to look at your life and you have to decide what your core values are. What are the things in your life that you absolutely must have? For me, my core values are anything that I'm doing needs to be sustainable. I'm talking from like a planet perspective, like sustainability. It needs to be kind to animals. It needs to be, if it's product involved, it needs to be non-toxic and clean. If it's business involved, I need to choose who I work with. I don't want to do the job for the money only. And it needs to allow me flexibility. And all of those things must happen in order for me to keep it. And it's taken me a really long time to get to that place where I make those decisions. But, I think about Soul Cycle. And one of the things that we were talking today about at training was we were like, if you are doing this job, which by the way, like a sidebar, if you know any fitness instructors, or, I interview a lot of fitness instructors on this podcast. And if you know any of them, know like the work that it took to do that job. And I, especially for Soul Cycle, because I can speak for this, I've been through the training program. By the time these instructors get on the schedule, they will have been put through the ringer. They will have been cut open and like pieced back together and like born again, essentially. And it's just really, really inspiring to get the opportunity to watch these humans kind of grow into new humans, more evolved humans, and then go out and spread their magic and their artistry and their skills just all over the city. And I'm just so excited. But, we talked about this, like you will at some point in your career, you will be burnt out. You will be tired. You will have days where you're like, I cannot go and teach this class right now. And there will be corporate changes and there will be things that happen within the company that you do not agree with. And it's always a really good opportunity to check back in with your core values. And SoulCycle's gone through a lot of change, and this is just one example. So if you're out there and you work for a company that's also gone through a lot of change and maybe a lot of turnover, people left, obviously when you think of a pandemic, it's like that's the biggest turnover there is, right? Like people have to make different decisions because it's a livelihood thing. And so people always ask me, like, Danielle, how have you been with SoulCycle this long? I've almost been there 8 years. And people are like, it's just so crazy. Like, how are you still there? Like, do you still love it? And, obviously I have multiple businesses and, I'm not at Soul for the money anymore. And I love that job. I love that room. I love training new instructors. I love teaching class. I love the people that I get to see every day. And that is why I'm there. And it feeds my soul. And if it didn't feed my soul, I wouldn't do it. And so I want to encourage you, wherever you are, whoever you are, when you're out there and you're listening to this, figure out your non-negotiables and then go through the different things in your life and decide if all of those things fit into your non-negotiables. And if not, what changes can you make? If you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still work the job you have? If the answer is no, then it's time to leave that job. If the answer is yes, ask yourself how many hours you'd be working. Is it the same as what you're working now? I once had to ask myself this. There was a time I used to teach like 16 classes a week at SoulCycle, and I was asked that question. If you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still be teaching? A, and B, if so, how many classes would you be teaching? And I said, of course I'd still be teaching. And if I won the lottery, I'd probably teach, I don't know, about 6 a week. And that was like a huge wake-up call. It's like, oh shit, like Danielle, you really, really, really need to reevaluate some things. And so I did. And so your call to action with this episode is just, and I want to thank Anastasia again, if she's hearing this, like that episode was so much fun. And she's just such a real human being. If you haven't heard that episode, go back. But your call to action is to figure out your non-negotiables, write them down, and then go through the different buckets, the different hats you wear in this life, and decide if all those things fit into your core values. And if they don't, what changes can you make to make them a part of your core values? I guarantee you will live a much happier life if you do that. I hope you have the best day wherever you are, and we will talk soon. See you Tuesday.